Hey guys, welcome back to Critical Flick. Today I'll be reviewing Napoleon. So Napoleon is the newest historical epic from Ridley Scott. As we've seen from Scott in the past, he knows how to make these kinds of movies, whether it be a classic like Gladiator. He always makes these large, huge set pieces that really throw you into these battles, and this movie is definitely not an exception to that. I think the battle scenes were phenomenal, some of the best battle scenes I've seen in recent memory. There are so many little details and so many moving parts to make a historical epic like this and have it be believable and make you feel enthralled as an audience member, and I think Scott does that better than almost anybody in filmmaking right now. There's so many huge battle scenes that maybe you saw in the trailers, whether it be the battle where they're out there on the frozen lake and you're seeing them shoot the cannonballs down there and throw the enemy into the water. It's just, there's so many cool things happening in the movie. Whether that's historically accurate is up for debate. I know that's a big criticism of this film, is that it may not be the most historically accurate film in the world. But if you go into it wanting to see a big epic film, I think you'll enjoy it. I think Joaquin Phoenix is excellent as Napoleon. Obviously, we've seen him in the past take on some really meaty roles. This is another one for him. It's a little more soft-spoken at times, but he knows when to be this huge, larger-than-life character and when to kind of withdraw back into kind of a very personal and human state. And I think that's one of the most interesting things about this film, is it really does focus at times on Napoleon as a man and on a human level. While we may have these huge mythical and almost, legendary stories of Napoleon and his conquest and his rise and fall from power, this movie does focus a lot at times on his relationship with his wife Josephine and everything that goes into that, kind of his struggles to prove himself as a man and as having a legacy and trying to do those things that he feels he needs to do. And I think when it focuses on those things, it slows the film down quite a bit, and I think for some people that may be difficult, but I do think it's important to telling the story, and it gives, Joaquin Phoenix opportunity to really show his acting chops in those moments. And speaking of Josephine, Vanessa Kirby plays his wife, Empress Josephine, in this film. I think she does a really good job. She does a great job of showing a woman of her time and the struggles that go along with that, kind of living in the shadow of this almost godlike figure, and her kind of struggles to be who she's meant to be or who she's destined to be in a way. She's not able to provide an heir for Napoleon, and that struggle leads her to kind of having this very melancholy and sad life throughout the film, and I think she plays it really well. She has this fire inside of her, and I think their dynamic is very fiery in some of the best scenes of the film, but there's also so many flawed elements to both these characters. Probably my biggest knock on the film is actually the overall pacing of the story. It actually takes place over 30 years of Napoleon's life, right around the events of the French Revolution to his death, and it jumps around quite a bit. We get some big, multi-year jumps that aren't really fully explained as an audience member. You just see a date and a battle and you're like, that's where we are. I think if you're not a historian, you're not someone who's following the story, you may not really understand the scope of time that's taking place. There's such a turbulence during this era in French history and European history in general that I think it may be a little baffling or a little hard to follow this film at times if you're not just along for the ride or you kind of know some of those contexts in between the big battles or big events. There's also some characters that are very important in history at this time that kind of get brushed aside at times, whether it be different emperors or kings or leaders or even Napoleon's own family members, whether it's his son or his brother, who have large stories themselves but get pushed to the fray because of what the scope of this story is. I know I've seen in the past that taking on a Napoleon film is difficult because of the myths and legends and kind of so many moving parts happening. And I think that Scott does a good job of putting on screen what would be entertaining for most people, but it does make it kind of difficult to follow a story that feels like it has so many missing pieces at times. I actually really enjoyed the score and the cinematography of this film. Like I said, Scott knows how to make a big epic film, and that shows through both in the score and in also the cinematography. The film has this very dark look about it most of the time, but there are some bright moments, but I think it really focuses on kind of the atmosphere of the times. It can be very dreary, but then very sunny in some of the bright parts of the story. And then as far as the score coming in, you need a good score for a good war film, and this hits on all the big moments, and even some of the quiet moments. You get to kind of take back and draw in the settings. Obviously, the costuming is excellent. If you've seen the trailers, I think this movie is very close to being a lock for best costuming. I know we've had some really good ones this year, but I mean, there's so many different looks of the aristocrats, of the soldiers, of the poor. There's so many things that you can see in this movie, and it's so vibrant and so contrasting and so intricate that I was constantly looking around at all the different decorations or tapestries. There's so much happening in this movie. So overall, if I were to rate Napoleon, I would give it an 8 out of 10. I think it is a technical feat. I do think for some people the 2.5 hour runtime and kind of the overall heaviness of this film and the breaking up of multiple years may not make it the easiest watch in the world, and it may not resonate with everybody. And like I said, history buffs may be able to pick it apart. I don't know that much about French history or Napoleon's history in general. So for me, I was just enjoying it. I wasn't saying, oh, well, that didn't happen that way or that seems made up. I was just enjoying it as a film. So if you checked out Napoleon, let me know what you thought about it. Did you like it as much as me? Or did you like it less? I would always love to hear everybody's opinions on all sides of the spectrum. And like I said, if you're someone who is a big fan of this part of history, you know a lot about this part of history, let me know what you thought about it. And if you're somebody who just went into it completely blind and maybe you barely knew who Napoleon was, let me know what you thought about it then. I always love to hear your opinions. Thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe. See you guys next time.